guys, welcome to Brick System Brothers. Today's video is a tutorial for Studio. Now Studio is a very nice digital building application for desktop. And Studio is actually put out there by Bricklink. Now for a while Bricklink and Studio were third-party independent, and it is now owned by LEGO. So acquiring Studio is now kind of similar to what LEGO had with LEGO Digital Designer, which is kind of the original digital builder, and it's pretty useful and it's a good way to get started with digital building, but in my opinion Studio really has some nice features that just kind of take it to the next level and really provide a nice way to build digitally with digital bricks. A lot of people use it, and there's a few things that have been added over the years that make it superior, including a rendering, kind of a built-in rendering system, and also an instruction maker, which is really handy, especially if you like to, put your designs out there. So the best way to do this is just kind of get started from scratch and explore the system. So pretty intuitive little interface here, user interface. We've got our building platform. So this is, going to be your typical X-plane. If you've used 3D modeling stuff before, you're going to find stuff really similar in terms of moving the build area around with just a right click and a drag that will rotate, and you can pivot all over the place. Let's go ahead and throw a brick on here. So our brick selection is over on the left, and this is all customizable. Something that is different from LEGO Digital Designer is our part categories, and instead of having our kind of tiles, our tabs like we did before, we now have just more of a list, and that can be viewed by the shapes categories, or you can switch over if you're used to the Bricklink categories, especially if you're a seller on Bricklink, or you have this linked somehow, which of course it's linked, it's put out by Bricklink, and so it uses these categories as well, and that's a different option. I find the shapes to be more intuitive, and I haven't explored all of these all the way yet. In fact, I would say more often than not, I've used Studio to build my physical models, and so I know the exact piece I'm looking for. I just use the search bar, and we can do that with the part number 2001, our good old 2x4 brick. When you have the part in your hand and you can go ahead and find the part number, you just type it in, it brings it right up. Yeah, and so then there's a couple additional tools here. We have our color tool, which gives our colors in the Bricklink categories. So it does take a little bit of a time investment to get familiar with all of these, and it is set up differently from Digital Designer. So one thing I hope LEGO doesn't do is change this a lot, because making a big time investment to learn this and then having LEGO change everything and the way things are categorized would not be very fun. So I hope that LEGO leaves this generally in place how it is. One thing that we could see that would be an improvement from LEGO would be if they brought back the ability to purchase your model through the LEGO store. And we saw that functionality hooked up through Digital Designer for a while, and then that went away. I couldn't tell you if that's going to happen. I'd like to see it, but I don't really know. It's not economically that feasible. Maybe it is. Who knows? So, our building plane here, pretty similar to LEGO Digital Designer. We have these tools, our hinge, clone, hide, an additional connect tool for making those connections, and of course we can click and drag these around. We can use the arrow keys to kind of position this, and pretty much all of the bricks in here have connectivity information built in, and so they will snap to the possible locations that they can be built on. Change it down here. Once you actually have pieces going in your model, there's kind of a model summary that will be available, and you'll be able to see what's going on. Alright, I'm going to start with kind of a little base plate. So we want plate, and then it just sorts it by size. So the smallest one's first. Looks like we have tiles and studded plates all mixed in together. Let's start with a nice 4x4. So now, first time I select a brick, it's just going to keep placing it as long as I have this selected, and I don't have anything held down on the mouse right now. It's just kind of a floater. So I can use escape to get rid of that. I think there's also a way to do it with a mouse click, but escape is pretty handy for me. Alright, now we're going to add some bricks. So back up to here. We'll throw in, and let's see, it has 1x2s it has all the variants, and so we have the variant with this hollow without a support in there, and this one is the regular one with the support. And so when I click on a single piece to move it, it just moves that single piece. Of course, we can select all the pieces in the model and move it around. And then if something is built off to the side, we can recenter the whole model. And so now it's centered on our model here, and how you do that is put it where you want it. You can do this to a single piece, so we're going to right click and we're going to reset origin. We can set as origin, and that will bring that to the middle. And then the reset origin just brings everything back to the center of the build window. Alright, so there you go, that's nice and centered. And yeah, I'm just going to try to build this up pretty quick so that I can get to the actual instruction part. So it's not going to be anything really fancy. Let's put on this arch on the front. Well, I'm in the brick, so I should do this one. Just type arch and see what happens. All the pieces with an arch feature get pulled up. That works pretty good. What else can we put on here? Let's do antenna. So just search terms in general are pretty good at finding the piece that you would want. In fact, I would say that's more, for me, that's more efficient than using the categories. It's just find a search term that's pretty descriptive, and it should get you right to it. For example, now I want this flag on here, but I don't want it in light gray, so I'm going to change my color to red. Dark red, why not? Alright, let's pivot this around with the arrows. Put it on there. And I actually want my flagpole to be brown. So let's see, I should be able to paint that with this tool. And I'm going to have to make my palette up here the color that I want to paint. So I have to set this to brown. And now when I use this paint tool, we're good to go. And that stays highlighted as long as it's clicked. So now what we have is the content colors. So this kind of just summarizes our model right here. Content colors are light gray, reddish brown, and dark red. And I mean, it's a pretty simple model, so we're not going to have a lot of colors here. The other thing I want to do before I show you guys the instruction maker is the step builder. And the steps come in handy when you do export it to the instruction maker. It just kind of helps break it down. So right now, everything has been built as a single step, and it's built in the order that I put the bricks on. So it makes sense. Let's go ahead and add this step. And now what I would do if this was a regular model is I would try to, as I'm building, I would try to do this. Just kind of put step breaks in where it seemed intuitive to have a step break. And so, for example, with this castle, I think it'd be intuitive to have a step break for the flag. And let's say also for these two small 1x1s. So I'm going to select all of these. I'm going to use Control and select these 4 pieces. It's kind of the back half of the model. Let's put the arch in there as well. And now I can drag all of these into step 2. So now step 1 is going to be our bottom plate and these 3 bricks that form kind of the base layer of the castle. Step 2 is the next layer of bricks and the flag itself. And let's go ahead, reset the origin now to account for the height of the model, like so. And yeah, it isn't pretty, but just wanted to build something to serve as an example of the functionality. Again, with those search terms, pretty handy. Didn't waste a lot of time looking through categories. Just for the sake of the argument, let's go ahead and see if I can find these pieces, this flag, for example. So the object category has pretty much all this stuff. And you know, what they do is they'll put the existing pieces in with this color that you have selected. So these aren't necessarily pieces you could actually use for a physical build because they haven't been produced by Lego. But you can certainly use them in a digital format, and Studio kind of allows that to be done. Don't see the flag right off, so probably better off using the search bar unless you get really familiar with these categories. Full disclosure, I'm not really familiar with the categories. I have been using Studio now for a little while, but I don't use it that often. I just prefer building with physical bricks. And at this point, Studio for me is a way to kind of have a digital backup of my models, which is a good idea. I highly recommend it. Alright, so build phase is kind of complete. Let's go ahead and look at the rendering. Now, Studio has this render feature, and it's all integrated pretty well. And what we can do is we can position our model however we want in this preview window. I'm going to go ahead and make this a portrait. I think it fits the castle better. And just to kind of keep things running quickly here, I'm going to make this a smaller resolution. Now there's kind of two options you could go with here. The photoreal render is kind of what it says. It tries to render it as it would look in a photo, and so it does put a little more effort into the background. You can also turn on the studs, so you can make the studs say Lego on there with the Lego logo, and you can adjust the lighting and all of this, and you pretty much have complete control over how this gets rendered. So I'll go ahead and render this off camera and throw that in here real quick. We can just take a look. So the render's done, photoreal render, and as we can see, this is a decent looking render. It is pretty low quality, just so that I could get this put through quickly for the video. But up that quality, up that resolution. It's all pretty much free reign on the details, and you can get some really snazzy looking pictures here. So this does put a little more effort into the background. You can change the lighting. You can do this on the other one too, but the photoreal takes into account some maybe for the UV degradation, scratches, stud logo. You can change all this stuff on here, but this is a photoreal. Let's take a look at the other kind that we can do with a render. Yeah, so setting this up is pretty simple. We can switch between photoreal and point of view ray. Now, point of view ray is more of a flat look on the render, and so the one we just looked at was the photoreal with kind of the default lighting settings. Now, point of view ray usually runs a little quicker because it doesn't need as much power to render the background. It's going to leave that pretty plain. It does do a little bit with shadows, and the nice thing about the point of view ray is you can have the background be transparent, and so then you could use that in editing software and layer that. So that's a nice touch to have. And so all this looks pretty good. I'll go ahead and set this as transparent, and now we'll look at the render of the castle. I'll change the angle just for interest. We'll put it like that, and we'll look at that as a point of view ray render. So as you can see, that goes a lot faster. The point of view array is a more simpler rendering style. I think this is what we saw back in the LDD, the old version of rendering. But now what we have here is a transparent background, so we can go ahead and put this on a generic template that we want, and we can add backgrounds to this pretty easily. Let's just do that real quick here. Find a sky background to use. So yeah, let's just do a quick edit here with the background. You can do this with most image editing. I'm just going to use my good old Paint 3D. So we open the file that we want to use as a background, and now we can insert our castle, and as long as it has a transparent background, this will work fine. So yeah, there you go. We can put it anywhere on the image. You can scale it here. Looks a little bit childish, but you get the idea. A transparent background is pretty handy if we want to make a render to use for display, especially if we already have a background that we can use. And now we can save this as a separate file. You can definitely make this look better by adjusting the lighting, but again, this is just kind of for demonstration, so pretty simple, pretty quick, and yeah, transparent background works really nice. So that's kind of the rendering capabilities of Bricklink Studio. Pretty nice. I think Lego Digital Designer had a way to do this, but I never took the time to figure it out. I never really used it, and so all of my rendering I now do on Studio. Apparently there's also an animation. I'm not going to pretend to know how to use this because I don't, but something in here to look into as well. Try to keep this video shorter as well. Okay, instructions. Before I get to the instructions, let's look at our Bricklink integration because that is pretty handy. We can look at model info. What model info does is it takes all the pieces in your creation, and basically it's just linking to Bricklink right now, real-time data for our pricing. If a piece isn't available, it will tell you. This is a pretty small model, so everything should be available here. And we can see that we have a total of 9 parts. There are 7 unique parts, so there's 7 lots. And based on the current price of these items on Bricklink, this model is worth about $2.25. So when you are building models that you are wanting to order pieces from Bricklink to build as a physical build, this becomes really useful and gives you an idea of how much a model is worth as well. Physical information is pretty much what it says it is. You get your dimensions here and your weight based on all of the info built into the bricks themselves, and that's just being pulled from Bricklink. If you're on Bricklink, you can see all this stuff as well. It's kind of all listed together. You can also sort these columns by clicking on them. So we have these two are both used twice. Once you get models with several hundred pieces, this becomes a lot more worth using, but our priciest piece is the dark red flag. That doesn't really surprise me. So yeah, it's a lot more fun to play with this stuff when you have bigger models, but just to give you an idea of what's going on here with our Bricklink stuff. Stability looks pretty good. There's nothing really hanging over on a cantilever, or there's nothing that's not connected. And so the model itself is very stable. I'm not really sure how Bricklink Studio configures this, if it's just checking all the connection information. Connectivity is all good as well. Some bigger models that I've done are full of red with the stability, so I guess it's just checking all the connectivity information on the pieces, and maybe it's accounting for gravity. I'm not sure, but it looks pretty. So with that, let's go and move on to the instructions really quick. And what it does is it basically just switches modes for the whole application. Okay, proceed, let's go. And it will create a step for each step that you've done in the building phase. And so that was down here at the bottom right. However many of those steps you've created with those pieces in there. Like I had this first step was these 4 pieces. that's how many of these it's going to generate automatically. So the step editor itself is maybe useful for getting everything exactly positioned, but I've done everything on page design before. And page design is more of the final look of what we see, like what we would see in a Lego instruction manual, for example. And so it's got your step number, your pieces for the step, and then a little render of the model itself. And we have complete control over this entire layout. Each one of these subsections is its own little box. You could export these. Let's see here. Let's put 2 steps on the same page, like that. Got to do a little bit of fixing now. I mean, a couple minutes and it's already looking like something you would see in like a little Lego poly bag that you get at Walmart. So we can, let's see here. I'd really like to make this, yeah, there we go. Oh, I can't stretch it out anymore. Move this whole thing over. So we can make it narrow. We can't make it, there we go. That's what I wanted. So yeah, just play around with this, guys. That's probably the best way to learn with it, is just have a go. Make a little scrap model first, in case something doesn't save or it gets completely messed up. And then the more practice you have, you should be able to get pretty good at this. Yeah, as with everything, it takes some practice. So, alright, I'm happy with that, I guess. Single page, 2 steps. Let's go ahead and export. PDF would be nice, especially when you have a lot of pages. You can make it into a book. You can leave out certain pages. You can save it to a location, and basically it just writes it to a file. So the bigger your model is, the longer that's going to take. The file quality size is pretty good. I think it's like 300 dots per inch. So quality enough for printing out, but also really handy to have as a PDF file for just distribution online. Let's see if I can change this step editor here. Nah, it's good enough. So when you're done, when you're happy with your instructions, there's plenty more here to cover, but just a basic introduction. We can go back to the actual model itself, back to the build mode. You can change stuff around. You can work on a whole different sub-assembly. You can split stuff, like select a certain amount. You know, you can create into submodel to where you have all these pieces kind of consolidated, and then that submodel will become its own part, and you can move everything together. So let's just say this is submodel top, and now what we have is the step 2 is just a single step, a single part called top, and top moves together. It doesn't, you don't have to have any single piece selected because it's now treated as an individual piece. And what we can do is we can go into top, we can edit, and now we can expand it. The submodel can have multiple steps itself. Hopefully you're starting to see the potential of Bricklink Studio is almost professional, borderline professional. I would call it professional capabilities here. And what you're going to want to do is just get a little experience, get a little practice in. The user interface is pretty intuitive, but it's going to take a little bit of effort. And if you're coming over from Lego Digital Designer, just know that the categories are different. That's probably the biggest thing for me, was using this part finder. And I'm pretty much still relying on the search function. Works pretty well. I would say the search here works better than Lego Digital Designer search. But yeah, play with it on your own. use that render, use that instruction builder. It's all right here in this application, which is really handy and really useful for pretty much taking your model building digital and then making that digital model presentable and exportable and possibly marketable. So there you go, guys. A very brief introduction to Bricklink Studio. Could possibly do some additional content here where we go and look at specific features and specific functions in this separate video, but that's maybe more of an all-encompassing thing. Just wanted to hit the build for the render and the instructions. And so we've got all those three here, and yeah, I think I'll call it good for now. Hope you liked the video, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one on Brick System Brothers.